Okay, hello, welcome back, everybody. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director here at GNAT-TV's news project. We're happy to have you with us for another edition of the News Project Live on Facebook Live. Just going to give you a little summary and a couple of updates on some of the stories we've been following and will be following going forward into the coming week. Um, I'm going to start with word of more demonstrations being planned for this weekend in connection with the George Floyd Black Lives Matter situation at the roundabout in Manchester over this past week or so. I'm sure several of you have seen a few protesters standing, waving signs, etc. So there's going to be another one tomorrow from 11 to 12:30 that sounds like it may be quite a sizable gathering of folks. Um, there will be a moment of silence around 12 o'clock, actually from 12 noon to 6 minutes after 12. There will be sort of a voiceless demonstration with kettlebells and cowbells and whatnot, and then 3 minutes of silence to basically symbolize the 3 minutes that passed between the time the police officer who was holding his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck and the 3 minutes that passed while Mr. Floyd lost consciousness. So anyway, that'll be something you'll probably want to be aware of if your travel plans call for you to be traveling through the roundabout. Could be some difficult going there. The demonstrations so far have been mostly peaceful. There were a few reports that came in from last week about a couple of, I guess, particularly some maybe testy exchanges between demonstrators and people driving through in their cars. Also, a couple of, at least one report anyway, of one truck driving fairly close to some of where the demonstrators were standing. So we'll obviously be keeping an eye on that. So will the Manchester police as well. Um, Speaking on that, we also want to note that the situation there at the roundabout has prompted a release of a statement from town leaders in Manchester. The town manager and select board have released a statement just urging people to remain calm and allow a peaceful legal protest to go forward, and commended the police department in Manchester for their ability to keep things under control so far. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Meanwhile, down in Bennington, the Bennington Banner is reporting that the police department down there is also coming in for some scrutiny in connection with some past situations that they've been involved with. Most notably, of course, as many of you remember, the Kaya Morris situation from 2 years ago, where she dropped out of a campaign for re-election because of perceived racist threats, and the police department there has been kind of struggling to kind of get I don't know what the right term is here, but back on their feet in terms of their perception of fairness in terms of racial issues. So a lot going on around the state, around the country in connection with all of that, and we'll be trying to follow it as best we can. Um, Another interesting piece of news of note that just came out earlier this week, the Vermont Community Foundation, a charitable organization, has announced it's going to be setting up a $1 million Main Street Business Relief Fund for the towns of Arlington, Dorset, and Manchester. This is designed to help out small businesses that have been badly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and the shutdown of normal economic activity that has followed in the wake of that. Individual businesses who think they might want to give a try for some of that money have to make their own application. It's not going to go through a town agency per se, but the individual businesses would have to see if they can qualify for grants up to, I think, $25,000 at the maximum, if you can show that either your sales were seriously affected, or that you had additional costs that you wouldn't have had otherwise. So we'll be talking, we hope, with the some folks from the Community Foundation next week, and hope to have a fuller segment about that on GNAT-TV and our website, gnat-tv.org. So we'll be following that one. It sounds like an interesting project. And if, oh, by the way, if businesses are interested, you can go to their website, and that is vermontcf.org to find out if to get the paperwork going. Okay. Otherwise, on Wednesday night, the Manchester DRB, the Development Review Board, had a action-packed meeting. A lot of proposals for projects being discussed there, and they will be back for more hearings about some of them. One of the ones we've been following for a while is the rail trail. Many of you will remember from a couple of years ago, there was a proposal to construct a walking and biking trail from basically the rec park up to North Road. That has now been completed. You can walk on it and bike on it and jog on it, but they're now in search of a permit for it. The supporters of the rail trail are. The meeting at the DRB didn't give enough time for all the sides to kind of talk about their concerns. We heard from several of the neighbors whose properties are being or properties are abutting the trail, and there's still some concerns and uncertainties about all of that. So we'll be trying to follow that. They won't be revisiting the rail trail again until another meeting in August. But before then, there will be, I guess, site visits and walks around on the park on the trail to see what's the situation. The governor at his regular Friday press conference up in Montpelier also spoke about, just to get back to the racial unrest situation, talked about that a little bit, and how this time these issues feel a little bit different, and noted that the state has formed a racial equity task force. The main part of the governor's presentation, I guess, had to do with the second phase of the $400 million relief package that they announced a few weeks ago, and are frustrated to some degree that the legislature has not pushed that through. The initial part of that was for $310 million for direct support to businesses who have been impacted by the COVID pandemic. And so now they were kind of unveiling the other 90 million, what they were hoping to see that money go to, and that basically comes down to things like economic support, financial assistance, broadband investment, housing, downtown improvements, and to modernize some regulatory and permitting tools, I guess basically digitalizing some of that process. So there are a number of other spending proposals that the legislature is also considering. So that's going to be an interesting thing to follow, to see what version of all these various plans finally makes it out the legislative gate with the governor's signature. Otherwise, in terms of new COVID infections and other medical public health information, 84 new cases were reported in Vermont last week. Somewhere between 30 and 40 of them are related to that outbreak in Winooski. 84 sounds maybe like a lot, but it's still far less than our neighboring states in New Hampshire and Maine. And those numbers are staying within a low enough range so that the growth rate remains within the parameters they've set. So the reopening of the economy will continue, at least as they've described it so far. On Wednesday, the governor and Secretary of Education Dan French announced that the plan is for schools to reopen next fall. Been a lot of discussion about that, whether or not that would work, how that would work, and then clearly it won't be the same experience as, let's say, the students returning to school last year got, but there will be temperature checks and health questionnaires awaiting students and staff. But right now, the plan is to try and reopen the schools in September. As you all know, schools went on a remote learning program been a lot of analysis about that done, and more to come. But the basic sense, I think, from a lot of educators is that nothing really replicates the classroom experience. Related to that, just want to mention a brief program note. We did an interview yesterday with Jackie Wilson and Randy Lowe, who are the outgoing and incoming superintendents of the Bennington Rutland Supervisory Union, respectively. That will be airing sometime, I hope, next week. But it's an interesting discussion. There are different perspectives from someone who's leaving the education scene. Well, not leaving completely, but going to be stepping down as a superintendent, and the new person coming in. So that'd be worth listening to, I think. One other last education note, Arlington High School will be holding its graduation tomorrow on Saturday, June 13th. We will be live streaming that, so you'll be able to catch all the action. And just to wind things up, garlic, this was just in, kind of announced just shortly before we went on the air. Got an email from the Southwestern Vermont Chamber of Commerce saying that the Garlic Fest in Bennington, which is usually held on Labor Day weekend, will be canceled this year. It will be postponed until Labor Day of 2021. That's historically been a big event. It would have been the 25th anniversary of that. Usually a very big event down in Bennington, but like so many other fairs and special events, it's going to be held off until next year. One last thing that many of you will be interested to know is that there is going to be some construction and paving work starting on Route 30, running from Manchester up through Dorset, about almost 8 miles of Route 30 from roughly the Rec Park area up to the Dorset Rupert Town line. We'll be seeing some repaving. It sounds kind of similar to the big project that was going on up in Winhall last year. But in any event, starting on June 22nd, they'll be kind of putting up signs and mobilizing equipment, preparing for the start of it. No traffic impacts are anticipated for that week of the 22nd, but it's coming. So if you don't know the back roads around Route 30, it might be a good time to find out. Anyway, that's about it for me for today. I hope you've enjoyed our little rundown and summary. And we'll see you again next week. Sounds like it's going to be a beautiful weekend. Hope everyone stays safe out there and be well. And we'll see you again real soon. Oh, one final other note I should mention. GNAT-TV stations you're used to seeing with 15, 16, and 17. They've moved up the dial to 1074, 1084, 1094. And you can also, of course, find a lot of our shows on our website at GNAT-TV.org. All right, that'll be it. See you again next week.